All right, welcome to an iHeartRadio album release party with the Tragically Hip, Rob Baker, Gord Sinclair. Thank you guys so much for joining us. So we're here to talk about the brand new album, Saskadelphia.
Awesome. Glad to be here.
So we got our mitts on these songs, you guys, and in listening to them, both kind of agree there's a real raw energy about the tunes themselves. It sounds like a bunch of Canadian kids really eager to prove themselves with something to prove. Do you remember it feeling that way? Like, is when you harken back to now 30 years ago, is that how it felt at the time?
Yeah, I think we were going into New Orleans coming off of a well-received record up to here. And we had probably played three or 4 years of 200 plus shows a year. So we were a tight band. We were rehearsing all of our material live on stage. And we were very aware of the sophomore curse that affects so many bands. And we wanted to make sure our second full album was as good or better than the first one. So yeah, there was a good energy. And the guy we were recording with, Don Smith, who worked with Keith Richards and Tom Petty, he was insistent that we play live off the floor. He didn't want to do a ton of overdubs. He didn't want isolation. He wanted us playing live. And that's what we were best at.
So explain Saskadelphia, if you could, because initially in doing some reading, we found out that was what you wanted to call Road Apples initially, right? And you were kind of talked out of it. Can you explain what Saskadelphia is, say for, being Saskatchewan and Philadelphia? What is that?
Sure. Well, we, as Rob said, after Up to Here came out, we played and played and played again. We were doing 5-6 shows a week all over North America and Europe. And we would joke at, we kind of lose track of where you were or where you were going next. And I think we were sitting in the van and someone said, "Where are we playing tonight?" And someone joked, "Oh, we're playing in Saskadelphia," as in we don't really know. It's just an amalgam. And we thought it would, it made us smile. So we said, "Wow, it's a great album title." We presented it to an American record company. This is what we wanted to call the record. And they were like, "Nah, too Canadian," with the Saska part in there. So we went back to the drawing board, and ironically, we wound up calling it Road Apples, which is as Canadian you could possibly be, but the Americans didn't know what we were talking about, never knew. So they thought, "Oh, that's a good title too," as in little apples we've plucked from the road, as opposed to frozen horse shit. So, that's basically the story behind that.
Now these songs have been hidden from Tragically Hip fans for over 30 years. Why now decide to finally release these to hip fans and to Canada? And was there a conversation with Gord before he passed about how you would release them and when you would do that?
We didn't really specifically talk about this with Gord, but he knew that there would be some archiving and going through the vaults at some point. I think we had all talked about that in a vague sense, but this was really all spurred by, I was in Rome doing some painting classes, and every morning I would read the New York Times, and I read this article about the fire that happened at Universal years ago in California, and thousands of artists' master tapes were burned up in this fire, and there's a big cover up, and they collected insurance money and didn't tell anyone. I got on my phone to Johnny and said, "Did we have tapes in that fire?" And he said, "I think we did. That's where Don Smith stored all the tapes from Up to Here and Road Apples." So Johnny started this search, and we were able to track down, apparently at some point our tapes had been shipped up to Toronto, and we've been able to locate a lot of them, not all of them. I think maybe 45 of 60 tapes or rolls of tape that we found, but it was enough to give us this material. And we know there's lots more material out there, even from this record alone, Road Apples. There's still more material that we just haven't found yet. So I was
going to say, it's not like we've been sitting on these tunes kind of waiting for this moment to arrive. In a lot of cases, we'd kind of forgotten that we'd even recorded some of them, or literally forgotten actually some of the tunes. We were, like Robbie said earlier, we were working really hard getting ready to make Road Apples, and wrote a whole pile of songs, trying to get the right song for the radio or whatnot. And in this case, we recorded way more than we thought we would ever need.
As big Tragically Hip fans like we are, and a lot of our audience is, of course, your band has taken us on this like crazy emotional journey over the last few years, and now we're in like a new phase of the Tragically Hip with the release of Saskadelphia. And when it comes to listening to your guys' music, some fans listen to it a little bit differently now. With how things have turned out. And for us, it can be hard sometimes to go back and relive all those amazing memories with you guys. And that's coming from just fans, not guys in the band. How tough was it for you guys to, go through all these old tapes and listen to all the old music that you probably hadn't heard for quite some time?
Yeah, it's been really difficult in a lot of ways, surprising in a lot of ways, emotionally difficult in a lot of ways. There's some great moments of us having conversations and all very quiet acoustic versions of particular songs, and hearing Gord's voice, echoing in that big old haunted house that we recorded in. It definitely carries you back. But that's the nature of what it is that we've done for a living. You make a record of a moment in time, and it's, in a lot of ways, I think at the end, it's life affirming to be carried back and to hear yourself playing as a young band when we were young men, really ambitious and really, out to conquer the world. Unfortunately, we're not all here to continue doing it together. And that's the hard part about it, for sure.
From artists like yourselves and others, you always hear things like unreleased or from the vault or whatever it might be, like B-side or whatever it might be. And I always wonder, like, okay, how long has it been since you've heard it? We've never heard it, but had it been 30 full years? And is that often the case that you'll go multiple decades before you go, let's go back and see what that sounded like, see what we left on the cutting room floor?
In the case of these songs, it had been 30 years. Hearing Ouch, the first time I heard that, and it was a matter of they have to bake the tape because it's on 2-inch tape and you only get so many passes to transfer it to a digital medium. So you bake the tape, put it up, you get 2 passes to transfer it. And they just, they didn't even mix it. They just pushed the faders up. And it's like, oh my God, we're in the room. It's like, you're right there, completely transported back and thinking, wow, this song didn't make the record. How odd. This is a pretty good song. It definitely got a vibe to it. And same with all the songs. In the case of Montreal, that was a song that obviously didn't make Road Apples, and we still haven't found the 2-inch recording of it from the session. But we did have a couple of live recordings of it that we played over the years. And it was just one of those songs that we'd revisit, every 10 years or something. We'd say, hey, why don't we play that tonight? And pop it in the set, and then it'd be gone again. So yeah, to hear that one come up was strange as well.
I wanted to ask you guys about Montreal off Saskadelphia, because it did sound live, and obviously we know now that it was a live version of the song. How many of these songs off Saskadelphia do you guys remember playing live in the early days? And, you guys have a band with such a cult following. Over the years, did any hardcore Tragically Hip fans come up to you guys and say, hey, what about that song I remember you playing in the early 90s? Did anybody ever remember the songs that they're going to hear on this album?
Yeah, I mean, some of those songs we played an awful lot in between recording of Road Apples and the release of Up to Here. We used to open shows with Crack My Spine Like a Whip. So for fans that have followed us for a long time, they would know that song fairly well. Same with Necessary and Just As Well. We were road testing these songs when we were touring Up to Here, just to get ready for this next record that we got the opportunity to make. We wanted to make sure we knew the song was cold. As Rob was saying, Don Smith, our producer, was really insistent on capturing that live energy of the band and recording us playing all at the same time. So it just made sense for us to road test these things, see how they went over with the crowd, and try to capture that energy when we got into the studio. So yeah, I mean, we still have folks that come back and talk about songs, even older than Reformed Baptist Blues that we played back in the club days, So it's very, very flattering how people kind of kept in touch with what we're doing.
Talk about turning the faders up and effectively hopping in a time machine back 30 years ago, and just revisiting a completely different time for the band with Saskadelphia. Do you remember, we talk about like the live track Montreal, you were playing festivals in Europe, you were touring with Rush. Do you remember what that time felt like just as far as like, being a band on the come up, things were really starting to happen for you guys. What did that time feel like?
It was a pretty exciting time. We're in a band traveling around in a van, and you're with your best buddies making music and living the dream. It doesn't get any better, really. It's pretty exciting. And warming up for Rush at Maple Leaf Gardens, what a trip. I'd gone to see so many shows there over the years, and suddenly you're on stage there. But all of these things, they don't happen in a vacuum. They don't happen overnight. Every step of the way, it just felt like the next step. It was a logical process. So, you don't just drop someone into the middle of a tour on a tour bus. You grow into that kind of thing. So when you get there, it just feels like a logical extension of what you're doing.
Awesome, guys. It was about a year ago, me and a couple of buddies were sitting in my basement, we were having some beers, and we were talking about your band, and we were listening to some of your guys' music. And, we were kind of just like throwing it out there, like, how awesome would it be to see you guys go on some sort of tour and get some of like your guys' friends that are in bands, lead singers like, a Colin McDonald of the Trues, or Rain Maid of Our Lady Peace, Brett Emmons of the Glorious Sons, to kind of like fill in on different songs on a different Canadian tour. And we were just kind of like fantasizing about what that might be like. And then we hear today that you guys are going to be playing at the Junos with Feist, which is going to be awesome. And she's going to be stepping in to sing some songs for you guys. Is there ever any like talk about that amongst yourselves of like, hey, could we do a tour with our friends and have different people come up and sing different songs?
It's come up. We have it, these things come up as possibilities. People propose things. We discuss this sort of stuff from time to time, but I don't think there's been a lot of appetite for it. We've been pretty resistant about going out and playing shows or even playing songs without Gord. It somehow doesn't feel right. And I have a lot of respect for bands like, say, Led Zeppelin, who said, well, John Bonham's not here, it's not Led Zeppelin. I think that was the right call. So in this case, it was just a matter of, it was the 50th anniversary of the Junos, and they're presenting us with a very nice honor. And it was suggested that we play live, and there was some back and forth about who it might be. And it wasn't really that interesting or compelling to us until Leslie Feist came up as a name, and everyone sort of sat up and said, that makes sense. Gord would approve of that. Gord would have a big smile at the thought of that. So
I am, enamored with this time machine that is Saskadelphia. We talk about, going back to a completely different era and 30 years for you guys ago. Do you remember what it was like recording in a place like New Orleans on some pretty hallowed ground, like you said, where artists like, Keith Richards and Tom Petty had wandered through, and having to do it live from the floor? You remember what that recording process was like? And was it daunting at all? I know you said the process for you guys was very incremental, and it happened the way it seemed it should be and it ought to be. But do you remember what that felt like, going down to a place like New Orleans and getting to record Road Apples and as it turns out, Saskadelphia down there too?
Yeah, I remember it like it was yesterday. It's all credit to Don Smith, who knew us really well as young men and as a young band coming up. And he knew taking us out of Canada and putting us down in an environment like New Orleans, where there's music everywhere, very unique place, and in a studio like Kingsway was. It wasn't really a traditional recording studio. It's a big little haunted mansion in the middle of the French Quarter. And he knew that we would soak up the vibe, the energy of that city, and put it into the performances. And we literally did. We were kind of living and eating and breathing and sleeping and drinking music like all the time. When we weren't recording, we were wandering the quarter, and there's literally there'd be someone busking on a street corner who's the best guitar player you've never heard of. And it was just inspiring, totally inspiring. So we would wake up every morning and just literally run to our spots and start playing, so it was just a complete and total vibe, so it was it was really great. I remember more about the city than I do about the recording sessions, truth be. Yeah.
I can smell the studio. I can smell the city. If I close my eyes, it all comes back very clearly. Very inspirational for us. And recording in that house was the inspiration for us to do our own vibe, which was the bathhouse, or is the bathhouse, where we did many later albums and where lots of other artists have recorded as well. So
now I don't want to jump ahead because we've just gotten a taste of Saskadelphia and some previously unheard music from you guys, but you did mention that there's other albums, that there's other songs on that we've never heard from either. Is this the beginning of something new for you guys, going back into the vault and potentially releasing more stuff from different albums that we might not have heard before?
I mean, we haven't actually discussed it, but as Rob was referring to earlier, this fire at the Universal lot was a real wake-up call for a lot of groups about the necessity of going back and finding your material, your the stuff that you literally. I understand with this fire that there were unreleased masters from Chess Records in Chicago that were lost, that we'll never get a chance to hear, which is kind of a crime against humanity in a lot of ways. So we've kind of taken that step forward now to kind of vowed to start archiving our material better, get our hands on our tapes, make sure they're preserved in a proper way. And that means going through them and listening to them. And I'm sure that we'll stumble on material that we don't really even know or remember that we have, which will be part of the process. And, I think there's a lot of interest in this kind of stuff. I'm a music fan, and I've just gone through all the different Wildflower releases that have come out from the Petty family, and it's pretty amazing hearing different versions of songs and unreleased material. And there's nothing better to do in the middle of a pandemic than to listen to music all day, every day. So I suspect it's something we'll get back into. I hope.
Yeah. Every record we did, we would kind of go into the studio with about 17 songs. Usually cut 2 in the pre-production, and so we'd have 15 songs, and you record those, and then you make a call, and you end up with 10, 11, maybe 12 on the record. But that means that you've got 2, 3, 4 songs that you've recorded that usually it's not a matter of quality. Usually it's a matter of 2 songs tread kind of similar ground, and it would upset the listen of the album to have 2 songs that were too similar, I guess. So, or 2 songs that are the same tempo. It gets hard to slot one of them in. Yeah. So, you end up with a wealth of material that is just sitting there. And we were always trying to push forward, so we weren't looking back and keeping track of it all. So now we've got to find it all, and we're in the process.
Well, listen, on behalf of Jesse and myself, but also on behalf of all of our listeners, thanks for taking us on a trip to Saskadelphia. This was cool as all hell. It really was neat, and just discovering there was more to Road Apples, and we really appreciate the time, guys. We really do.
We appreciate it too. Thank you.
Thanks.